airport, and he hears the news that Kennedy has been shot, and he's so mortified. Because think about this. The man who had the most serious case of sour grapes with Kennedy was there in that city that day. And so he's mortified by this, and he goes on to want to know more about this. And years later, perhaps we can talk about this, as President of the United States, he starts trying to get CIA files pertaining to the Kennedy assassination. He wants to know more about this. And I think he wants to know, why was I seemingly placed in Dallas in this incriminating position? What was that about? And I have to say, I mean, I'll just cut to the chase. My conclusion is that people who wanted to have some control over Richard Nixon wanted to put him in a difficult position.
And that would be?
That would be putting him at the scene of the crime.
And those people would be?
Well, this is one of the sort of central themes of Family of Secrets, which is that we're a little bit naive about the strength of our democracy, that we believe that things are, everything plays out on the surface, that elections are everything, that we make the final choices, and we ignore the power of these tremendous centers of the war-making apparatus, that this is half of the American budget, the federal budget goes to that. When I talk to people from other countries, I don't care what country it is, they all understand that wealthy interests have a tremendous amount of say right below the surface in shaping their country's policies. But in this country, we don't get that. We don't understand
Well,
that.
you're not saying it's like a star chamber where there's
absolutely not.
Cabal.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just the way things work. Throughout history, you can go back. I don't care if it's ancient Greece or ancient Rome or wherever it is, everywhere, there are more powerful and less powerful people. And the more powerful people tend to form alliances. They tend to know each other. They join groups together. They go to the same prep schools. They intermarry. They do business deals together. And what's more important if you have a big business than the most powerful person in your country?
But the other power is, and the other theme in much of your book is the intelligence agencies. And as administrations come and go and politicians come and go through elections or other means like assassination or whatever it may be, the CIA doesn't. They stay the same. And it also seems to me that the CIA is inextricably intertwined with big business. You talked about the fruit company.
United Fruit,
Thank
right.
you. The Chiquita banana people. I mean, there and big oil, the oil interests, and how that was related to naval intelligence. So it seems as if private industry has had a greater control over, or you correct me, maybe I'm wrong. Seems to me that private industry, the big private industry, has had a greater control over our intelligence services than we have.
Well, absolutely true. Look, right on the surface we can see this. I think we forget this, but look at every election. Where does all the money come from? It comes from business. It comes from big business.
Yeah.
So on the surface that's true, but it's also true below the surface. In other words, how does somebody who comes in who's a president, presidents they're really regular people. I mean, they're not superhuman.
Yeah, well, we always wonder, this is the best we could do? There's a nation of 300,000 people, and the best the Republicans can come up with is George W. Bush?
Right. Well,
There's a reason that Bush was the guy.
What did Ronald Reagan know about who to put in these specialized positions? Frankly, what did even a very bright man like Jimmy Carter, I mean, he'd been the governor of Georgia. He basically turned to sort of the Rockefeller interest to help him find people like Brzezinski.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know who to turn to, but you can be sure that these large, powerful financial and resource extraction and military contract interests, they're right there, and they're giving money, and they're advising them, and they say, let me suggest, why do you think it is that Robert Gates, who was the CIA director under Bush 41, was the head of the Pentagon for Bush 43, and is the head of the Pentagon for Obama 1?
Yeah.
I mean, why is that? Why is a man who was completely on the other side of all these issues has the same people in there? I mean, you have to think about that.
Yeah, well, Ray McGovern has opinions on that, that's for sure. 808-0810 is our telephone number, 808810. Let's go ahead and get a couple phone calls in, and then I've got to take a break, and then we'll do some Watergate stuff, too. Let's go to Judy in San Francisco. Judy, hi, welcome to KGO. You're on with Russ Baker. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want confirm what you said about Nixon, because I was listening to the radio 24 hours after the event, and on the radio I remember they announced it once. I know they closed the airport right after the assassination. They said that Nixon was on the plane. And so when I told somebody, listen to the news again, it has never repeated itself again. And I was saying, usually they repeat the news constantly, you know, the same thing over and over.
Right.
At the same day, they never repeat the thing that Nixon just left Dallas. And another thing I was going to ask him is the Garrison, position in this whole investigation.
Let me first address your first point. That's interesting to me. I didn't know about that particular report you're referring to, and if you get a chance and want to send me an email, that would be great. You could just go to our website, familyofsecrets.com, and I'd love to correspond with you about that.
And the other question was about Jim Garrison.
Garrison, yeah, he played. I forgot now what he did, but I know he did something, because I was living in New Orleans years later and got to know him, and he was telling something. So I just want to know more about Garrison and the investigation.
Sure. Well, Garrison was the district attorney of New Orleans, and he began this investigation into the assassination. He was vilified, as has been everyone who has tried to look into this thing. And many, many years later, he's looking better and better. He really was trying to do this. But it turned out that even on his own staff, there were infiltrators who were working for the intelligence services and were trying to sort of stymie what he was doing.
So the Warren Commission, worthless?
Well, worse than worthless. The Warren Commission, again, another aspect of Family of Secrets. I go into the origins of the Warren Commission. Earl Warren did not want to run this commission. He was essentially blackmailed by Johnson into it, did not want to do it, and almost all the people on the commission itself were not friends of John F. Kennedy, which is interesting. I mean, they were not even supporters or fans of his. And when you look at the investigative staff, they were almost all lawyers who were taken from major conservative corporations. I mean, normally when you want to get to the bottom of a homicide, you would take homicide investigators, not corporate lawyers who were involved with the corporate side of antitrust cases. In other words, they were battling the Kennedy administration. These were the people who were supposed to be investigating his death. Just on the surface, it smacks of wrongdoing. But there are a lot of specifics. The man who was interviewing people like George DeMornshall for the Warren Commission, his boss was one of the largest defense contractors. They were being investigated by the Attorney General. I mean, they were all compromised. Kennedy, yeah. They were all compromised. The entire Warren Commission process was a cooked process.
And what was Earl Warren? I mean, isn't he a fairly credible person?
Well, Earl Warren basically. I think he's a little bit, personally, was a little bit overrated. I don't think he was that much of a heavyweight, but the fact was he was a respected figure with the Supreme Court and so forth. He'd been governor of California, and he did have that kind of clean image. That's what they do with all these things, the 9/11 Commission, Iran-Contra. They always take these figures that are these so-called esteemed figures, but they're not boat rockers.
Well, until they become boat rockers, and then you've got Elliot Spitzer with a hooker.
Yeah, well, Elliot Spitzer's never been on one of these commissions.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying that's the kind of people that they put on there, these very statesman-like figures. And their job, by the way, is not to get to the bottom of things. Earl Warren was told, you wrap this thing up quickly. We need to move on, and we need to end this speculation about whether other countries were behind this. We don't want to have a war, and we don't want this country tearing at itself. Just shut this thing down and move on, and that's exactly what they did.
Lord have mercy. 808810 is the telephone number, 808-0810. Russ Baker is my guest. The book is Family of Secrets, and you're listening to KGO News Talk 810.